Yes. Nice. All right. How's everybody doing? Thank you, Shelby. How's everybody doing? You guys are so quiet. Yes. All right. So, you guys lucked out, right? Because Alan is on vacation, so you're stuck with me, okay? So, there were a few people that were happy about that. Thank you. All right. So, I'm super glad that you guys are here, and I am really excited to be able to start a new series with you guys, all right? So, last week, right, Alan talked a little bit about values, okay? So we have values here at Gather, and those values are important to us, and they're things that we are going to stick by throughout the school year and throughout the rest of the time that you're at Gather. They're very important to us. And one of those things is that everything in the Bible points to Christ, right? Alan talked a little bit about that last week, and that is super important to us, that everything in the Bible points towards Jesus. And so when we hear that, that means that those of us who know Christ, those of us that know Jesus, understand him to be good. He's a good and loving God. But when we read his word, sometimes he says some pretty crazy stuff, right? He says some stuff that might feel like a little out there. It's a little weird, and it's like, well, maybe why did he say that, you know? And so we read these things, and we can get confused. And I'm going to be honest with you. It's okay to be confused. It's okay to try to not understand right away, to not understand initially. But that's why we're doing this series called He Said What? He said what? No, thank you. There we go. All right. Thank you, Micah. Appreciate it. So He Said What? That's what the series is called. And every time you talk about the series, that's how you have to say it. So when Alan comes back next week, when he's here next Sunday, if he asks you to say it, or if he talks about the series at all when he intros it, make sure you say, He said what? So let's practice, all right? Okay, there we go. All right, yeah. Okay, I like that. All right, nice. All right, so today's that I'm going to go through is probably one of the ones that is going to seem pretty controversial, or you might have issues with it. But before I get into it, I love movies, right? So I got away with playing a movie game with us today, and so I want to talk a little bit about a movie that came out last year. So a film that came out last year called 1917. Did anybody see it? It is not many, and I know not many saw it, but it is a beautiful movie, all right? It's a beautiful movie, and it's about two soldiers during World War I that have to get a message from one side of the battlefield to another, crossing enemy lines. And the whole movie is you following these two guys going over there. And the kicker, though, is that one of the two guys has a brother on the other side of the battlefield. And on the other side of the battlefield, they're going to push forward and they're going to attack the Germans. But what they don't realize is if they attack, they're going to get bombed and they're all going to get killed. So when this gentleman hears this, he's like, there's no doubt in my mind. I'm going to tell my brother that they can't attack because I want him to survive. There was no question. If you watch the movie, he never questions it. He's never what do you want us to do? What do you need us to say? What do we have to pass something on? What if we see soldiers? There's never any questions. It's just simply, I'll go. And that's hard. To know that you have to cross through enemy lines where there could be bad guys, there could be Germans, but he still crosses through just to save his brother. And that's a big deal. And so today, the passage that I want to focus on is one that we have titled, Hate Your Mother. Hate your mother. And this is you might be hearing this and you're like, okay, so how does this relate? And we'll get there. I'll show you. But the reason that's in quotes is because this is something that Christ has said. This is in his word. And it's pretty wild. So I want to look and dig into the text to see why Christ said this and how we can use this. And so we're going to do it in an investigative approach, okay? So we're going to look at this, starting with the point of what did Jesus say? What did Jesus say? So before we even see what he meant by it, what he was saying, let's just see what he was saying, all right? And so this passage is particularly difficult, and all the other ones that we're going to go through are particularly difficult because we often want to look at the text and say something like this, where it says hate your mother, is a metaphor for something. Or he was just saying that just to get something by or something along those lines. When in reality, we have to actually look first at what he said before we can figure out what he meant by it. So, when we hear Jesus say, hate your mother, we can't immediately assume it's a metaphor or an example, but we have to see what he says. So, let's look at Luke 14, starting in verse 25. It'll be up on the screens. It says, now great crowds accompanied him, and he turned and said to them, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all those who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going out to encounter another king in war will not sit down first and deliberate whether he is able with 10,000 to meet who comes against him with 20,000? And if not, while the other is yet a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So therefore, any one of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. This is a tough one. This is a hard one. And it's not even hard from necessarily a study perspective. It's just kind of hard to hear it and accept it, you know? And so that is okay. It's okay that it's difficult. But it starts out with a kicker, right? That you must hate your father, your mother, your wife, your children, your brothers and sisters. And if you don't hate them, then you can't follow God. Essentially, you can't truly be a Christian unless you hate them. So hearing that, there's a temptation to think, well, he doesn't mean you completely push them out of your life, right? Or you don't think the worst of them. Why would, Jesus would never say that. So I was like, well, let's see what the original text says. And the word that is used there in the Greek is missio. Say that with me, missio. Missio. And so, when you translate that to English, or when you put it into English, guess what that word translates to? Hate. It literally translates to I hate. And you're like, all right, so I hate, maybe not hate in the normal sense we think. No, it means that. It means to completely abhor something, to think that it is the worst thing in the world. That is the word that Christ uses here. And so that's a lot. And so I want you to think about things that you hate, right? So maybe it's a certain food, like vegetables. Is there anybody here that absolutely hates vegetables? I knew Micah was going to raise his hand. I knew it. So maybe it's another food. Maybe it's a TV show or something. One that I think is really bad is Outer Banks on Netflix. That show is really bad. But some of you guys love it, so I don't really get it. Yeah, I knew that was going to be the response. Some of you love it. But, okay, so those are things that you might completely disdain. You just don't like those things. But maybe it's something that you hate is more serious, right? So maybe something like racism or sexism or porn. Something along these lines. Maybe these are the real things that you hate, that you just cannot stand. Now imagine taking how you feel about those things and transferring it to a loved one. And that is how you are supposed to feel about a loved one. And this is extremely hard for some of us. Some of us might think it's impossible. Some of us might already feel this in relationships that we have with loved ones. And I want you to think about, or not necessarily with loved ones, but with parents. I want you to think about people, though, that in your life that are like parents. Or maybe your friends, or your brothers or sisters. You're still supposed to feel the same thing. It's woo! What are you saying, Jesus, And so, we're going to keep going in the passage, though. So the next verse says that a man has to bear his own cross. A man has to bear his own cross. And so this is tough to understand, but why Christ is saying this is something that he is going to soon do. So he is soon going to have to literally carry the cross that he is going to be killed on through the streets. People are going to be spitting on him, yelling at him, telling him he's worthless, telling him he's a criminal. And he has to bear it openly, saying that with that cross, I am God. I am the Messiah that you've waited for, and yet you're killing me. but I have to bear this. I have to walk the streets. He openly carries something that is considered shameful to everyone else, but that he is proud of. He is proud that he is able to give his life. And we might have different things that we think is a cross that we bear, right? So if you were here last week, Alan talked a little bit about Chick-fil-A, right? Well, I carry my own cross of raising Canes. So, yeah, there's a few of you, but then everybody else is like, I don't want to say anything right now, but he's going to get a word later, And, that's the thing is I love Canes, and, I might walk down after this, and you guys might be spitting on me and yelling at me and telling me I'm worthless, but I love Canes, and I'm going to bear that on my shoulders, all right? Thank you, Micah. I appreciate it. Okay, and the thing is that it is bearing something that that others necessarily don't understand or appreciate, but that is truly real, and that it's love, And so Jesus then uses this phrase, counting the cost. Counting the cost. And that is when you look at the project ahead, you make sure that you have everything that you need to accomplish it, and that you're able to go through with it, counting the cost. And so Jesus uses this example of building something, right? So when you build something, you have to make sure that you have wood, like a building. You have to make sure you have wood, that you have tools, that you have workers, that you have money, that you have time. And so when he's giving this example, he's saying, so imagine you say, I'm going to build a new building. I'm just going to go for it, I'm not going to make sure I have everything I need. And so you start building something, and you get quarter way through, halfway through, and realize I actually don't have everything that I need, That is why we have to count the cost to make sure that we have everything that we need, that we understand what we are paying for. And the thing is, think about today, maybe you and your friends want to start a podcast, all right? You want to start a podcast, and typically they're free to start off, so it's not, money isn't the issue, but you have to, it's time commitment. You have to make sure you have listeners, people that are willing to be on the podcast. Make sure you have content. Make sure you have the equipment. Make sure you have the time. Make sure you have a place to, all these things. And you're bragging up to your friends I'm going to start this podcast, and we're going to be talking about, video games, or we're going to be talking about, celebrities, or we're going to be talking about the Bible, because I love the Bible, or something like that. And then all of a sudden you're like, nah, it got too hard. Yeah, your friends are going to be like, what's this guy, what you doing? You think you can do this, but you told us you were going to do this, but you never finished it. And that's the point that Christ is making, is that you're going to start something, people are going to see that you didn't finish it, and they're going to scoff at you and laugh at you and tell you, you can't do this. And so Christ ends this passage and talks about our commitment to him. And what Jesus is saying here is that you have to count the cost, and eventually you have to choose to renounce everything that you love to follow him. To renounce means to give up, to say it's worthless, to say it's less, because Christ is all. So that first point that you guys have says, if we truly count the cost, Christians should be unashamedly living for Christ first. That everything you're doing, if you count the cost and you see that you are able to go through with this, that you're able to be a Christian, that you're able to commit your life to Christ, that you have no problem saying that Christ is first, and that you are willing to say that you hate your mother because you love Christ. All right, so if we truly count the cost, Christians should be unashamedly living for Christ first. There's a lot there, and what I really did was I just took the passage and just explained to you what he was saying. But now we're going to see, what does Christ mean, or what did Christ mean in this? So that's the next thing that you guys are going to be looking at. What did Jesus mean? And so we see all these things, right? And so the first part is that we understand that we're literally supposed to hate these people in our life that we're also supposed to love. And so if we want to truly grasp that, what that means, we have to look at the context back then. So if you were a Jewish mom or dad, okay? If you were a Jewish mom or dad, and and your kid came up to you and was like, hey, this guy is saying he's the Messiah, and I'm going to follow him because I've seen his work and I know he's good. They're talking about Jesus. What would be tradition and what you would probably do as a Jewish parent is that you would say that, well, you're not allowed to be part of our family. Like, I disown you, basically. Because you're following this person that says that they're the Messiah, yet they haven't fulfilled any of the stuff that our Bible, that our text says the Messiah should do. So why do you think that? If you're going to follow him, like, you can't be part of our family. Like, you can't be with us. And that was the reality. That was the decision that had to be made if you were a Jew at the time. And that's a hard decision, to say that you are willing to not be with your family anymore, you know? But what was happening was people were counting the cost. They were seeing if it was worth it to follow Christ and leave their family. They were seeing if it was worth it to follow Christ or to keep their family in good standing. Which one was better? They were counting the cost. So when you think about your family, right? If you think about your parents or people that are like parents to you, you know, how would they be if they found out that you were a Christian? Would they be pumped? Would they be excited? Would they be sad? Would they be mad? Would they be frustrated with you? And in reality, you have to understand that when you follow Christ, everybody's going to know. Everybody's going to know. And that's the bearing the cross. That's what happens when you bear the cross of Christ. When you are willing to walk out in the streets and say, I love the Lord more than I love you, even my mom and my dad. Like, for me, it would be but if I love Christ even more than my wife. Like, in comparison, I hate my wife, you know? Whew, that's hard. That's hard, I know, and I'm glad Sydney's not here. No, I'm just kidding. She would fully back me up. But when you're walking on the world, you have to be unashamedly living for Christ. So when you're bearing your cross, it's like if you were to put on a t-shirt right now that on the front and the back and the sleeves it says, I love Jesus more than everybody else, and he is my all. He is my everything. How would you feel about that? Would you feel weird? Like, honestly, think about that. Because you're sitting in here right now saying, no, that wouldn't be too bad. But what if I actually gave you that shirt to go do that? Would you, be like, hey, I'm just going to throw a sweatshirt on over this or something like that? You know, like, I don't need people seeing this kind of thing. Like, if they ask, I'll show them. But, you know. Or, what would your parents say if they saw you wearing that? Or what about your boyfriend or your girlfriend? What would they say if they saw you wearing that? Would they be like, hey, you should take that off. You should change before we go to dinner or something, you know? What would they say? And the thing is, are what they have to say and what their opinions, are they truly more important than how you feel about Christ? Is your love for Christ more than what they have to say, or are they kind of like on equal footing for you? You know? And that is what Christ is pointing towards, the fact that you have to count the cost to see if you are willing to give up your friends, to give up your siblings, your parents, people that you consider parents in your life, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever it is in your life, even yourself, for Christ. That's what counting the cost is, you know? And the easy thing to say here is yes, right? Like, I'm in church, I'm here at Gather, I could totally say yes. Yeah, that's easy. But when Christ says count the cost, he's asking you to consider all of those things first before choosing to follow him. Because if you don't, then you can't truly follow him, right? So, nerd out with me here for a second, all right? You might want to jump on board because you think it's easy, or you think it's fun, or you think you're called to do it, and you want to be in it with your friends kind of thing. But let's think about Luke Skywalker, right? He thought that he heard that he was supposed to be the man. He was the Jedi, he's going to save the galaxy and defeat Darth Vader. And then he goes and trains with Yoda, and he's like, I don't need this training. You can't teach me anything. And then all of a sudden his friends are in danger, and Yoda's like, you can't do anything about this. If you try to go do something about this, bad things are going to happen. And Luke's like, nah, I got this. And he goes to save his friends, and he gets his hand cut off, I'm not saying you're going to get your hand cut off in this situation. I guess you might. I don't know. You might. But what I'm trying to show you is that, like Luke Skywalker, his overconfidence and what he thought what he was supposed to do is what got him in trouble. That's what got him his hand cut off and his friend, sent off to the person that he owes money to, Count the cost. Because if you don't count the cost and you quit partway through like that builder, people are going to look at you and be like, Christ isn't worth following. if you're going to quit him partway through when things get hard, he must not be that great. It must not be, like something that's worth giving your life for. But the flip side is, if you choose to commit your life to him, and you say, I'm willing to hate my mother, my father, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, because I love Christ, that speaks volumes to other people about who Christ is. That shows people that he is worth it, that he is worth that love. So this passage is saying a lot, okay? This passage is saying a lot. But the big thing I want you to understand is that your love for your parents or your loved ones or your boyfriend or your girlfriend are down here compared to your love of Christ, which is up here. And if your love for Christ should be so great that this seems like hate because you love Christ so much. And the point is that it should be so easy to choose Christ before your family. And that's the hard truth that comes out here. It should be so easy to choose Christ before you choose a loved one. And so, what did he mean? When we count the cost, our love for Christ should be so great compared to our love for anyone else. That it should be so great that it looks like hate because we love Christ so much. And so, that's what he meant. All right, so what did Jesus say? What did Jesus mean? And this last part is, what are we supposed to do with what Jesus said? What are we supposed to do with what Jesus said? And this is where things get tricky, right? So we're not Jews sitting in this room. Most of us probably aren't, if I had to guess. We're not Jews sitting in this room, so we really probably wouldn't have to worry about being renounced, But the concept that I really want you to take home with you is count the cost. Count the cost. Ask yourself very seriously, is Christ your all? Is he your center? Do you do everything for him? And if your parents were to tell you, you're not allowed to love Christ, you're not allowed to read his word, you're not allowed to go to church, you're not allowed to go to gather, are you okay with coming anyway? That's a hard truth. And here's the thing. I know some of you are going to take this way, so listen up. I'm not telling you to disobey your parents and everything, all right? I'm not giving you a get-out-of-jail-free card, okay? Because if you say, well, my mom told me, I'm not allowed to go over this person's house or go have a sleepover at this person's house, but they're a Christian and they go to a youth group with me, so I get to go anyway because, I love Christ more than my parents. That is not what I'm saying at all, so let that be heard. Live stream, let that be heard. Any parents watching, I'm not saying that, okay? We're still called to honor our father and mother, but sometimes the best way that you can honor them is by choosing Christ first, because that speaks volumes, right? That shows them that shows that he is worth it. And so you might say, well, my parents are Christians, they go to church, or they're okay with me coming here, they're cool with that. But what about this? What about this scenario? So let's say it's something like your mom's birthday, or maybe it's your boyfriend or girlfriend's, it's your anniversary with them or something, or maybe it's the birth of a sibling or something like that. And you know that you have a friend that is going to leave this area, never going to come back. Maybe they're moving to a different country, might never hear from them again. And this is your last chance to tell them about Christ. What do? You go tell them about Christ, because your love for that your mother, for your boyfriend, your girlfriend, that unborn sibling is down here compared to your love for Christ. So if that is legitimately your only opportunity, you take it. And so in that scenario, you're not hating your mother, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your sibling, the way that you traditionally would think, but it should be a choice that you're this is the clear decision. This is the clear choice that I choose Christ over them. I choose Christ over them. And the thing is, this is hard. I'm going to be honest with you guys. This is not an easy topic. And there's a lot here, and I could fill this in with gimmies and passes and stuff like that. But if I'm being honest with you, this is what it takes. If you think about missionaries, Like, I talked to Tyler before this. Tyler Perrin is one of your leaders, and his plan is to go overseas to Portugal next year. And his dad is like completely against it. Like, no, like, don't do, like, I'm not supporting you. Like, you're not, like, this isn't going to happen. Like, that's how his family is responding to the situation. Like, if you're going to do this, like, it's just not worth it, man. Like, you shouldn't be doing this. But Tyler is going anyway. And Tyler, sure, he gets frustrated with his parents. He probably does. I mean, but the reality is, he knows where his love lies. And that's huge. And I'm not saying if you have to push away these people, if you have to choose Christ in a difficult situation, that you never talk to them again. Talk to them. Tell them about Christ. Tell them why you did it. But also explain to them about how your love is so great that your love for them is like down here. Love the Lord. Sometimes it's hard to talk about these things. I know. And I want to make sure that we talk about it with one another. So if you were here last week, what we did is we split into tables to do discussion questions, and that's what we're going to do now. So we're going to put some questions up on the screen, and I want you guys to split to these tables about like eight-ish people. If there has to be more, that's fine. Leaders, you guys spread yourselves out too. And then you guys are going to talk about these questions for like 10-ish minutes, all right? So get through as far as you can. So I know it's not a lot of time. I know it's not a lot of time. I encourage you to dwell and think about these questions, all right? And there's one part of tonight's talk that I left out. And the band, you guys could go ahead and start coming up if you guys are ready. But there's one part that I didn't talk about yet. And it's, why would I follow this? Why would I follow this rule? Why would I do this? You know? Because in all honesty, like, if you're telling me to love somebody and hate my mother, my father, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my friends, my siblings in comparison, like, you must be calling me to do something big. And the reason why is because he first loved us. Is because Christ loved us to the point of death. A sinless man that is fully man, fully God, loved us so much that he was willing to die and to give his life. So why should our love for him be up here compared to our families and our friends down here? It's because he loved us first in the best way possible by giving us an opportunity at life, be able to have life. I want you to think about that as we worship and as we sing these last two songs. Think about those things. Think about why you love Christ. And if you don't, if you haven't committed your life to him, talk to the leaders that are at your table. I am sure that they would love to have that discussion with you. They would love it. So I'm gonna let the band take it away. You guys can come move up here, but spread out throughout the room if you guys want, and we're gonna continue in worship through tonight.